it's Libby Parker, registered dietitian, and today's video is going to be a little different. I don't really have a plan for what I'm going to talk about other than I just want to share things that I've really learned about myself over the last year, and I know that a lot of you will relate. So hopefully you can take some of these lessons as well, and it will speed up your journey along the way. So I've had a really interesting year in my life. Last fall, about a year ago at the time of filming this, I was laid off from an amazing job that I had, and just to protect everyone, I'm not going to go into it, but the position of dietitian was just cut. So all of a sudden I had very little income. I sold my private practice, which is now growing and thriving. And as you know, I'm getting ready to hire another dietitian. It's all amazing. But at the time I had like 3 private clients and had found that I wrapped a lot of my identity in my job. This was kind of news to me because I was always like, oh, I'm doing 50 things and no one thing really defines me and blah, blah, blah. But being in a small town, there was a lot of shame that came with losing that job. And everyone would talk about like, oh, aren't you still doing this? And I'm like, actually, no, I got let go. And even though it wasn't through any fault of my own, it was still really hard to talk about for a long time. And I ended up in a pretty deep depression last fall. So got back into therapy, which I love therapy. If you don't do therapy, everyone can benefit from therapy. Most of my clients are also going to therapy in addition to seeing me. And I always tell everyone I should have been a marriage and family therapist because I love counseling. I like going to it. I like doing it. So yeah, anyway, ended up getting on antidepressants as well, just because I was the most depressed I had been in my life. It was quite a rough time. And thankfully I was able to use that extra time for some good. And I'm going to speed through a lot of this because if you're struggling with any mental health issues, it's always a very different process for each individual. So I'm not going to say that the way I got through it was the same for anyone else. But it did afford me the time to write my book, which got published this year. So even out of the darkness came something really good and something that I think is going to continue to grow in my life and grow in my practice. And, sort of some really great things came out of that. And it also gave me a big chance, and really the prompting of this video was to kind of have a personal renaissance or rebirth of my life over this last year. So while my identity and work was getting ripped apart, I decided to start kind of digging apart all different aspects of my life and see if I was really being true to myself and if I was just following a script that someone else had set for me in my life and what I was supposed to do, or if I was doing things because I felt they were true in my heart. And for the most part, life was pretty good. I didn't make any radical changes in my life, but I started exploring things like my own spirituality and religion, and I'm considering converting religions actually right now, just because it's something that was just always kind of, I don't want to say forced upon me, but just expected of me to follow what my parents and now my husband does. So I'm just exploring that on my own. I'm exploring more of who I am, not attached to anything else. So not attached to a job or a person or anything. I'm just trying to just be my true authentic self. And that has meant, looking at a lot of different things, different relationships in my life, different ways of thinking that I had. Like, for a very small instance, growing up, I was the epitome of a tomboy. When I was a little kid, my mom would tell stories about it would take 6 people to hold me down, kicking and screaming to put on a dress. I was out climbing the trees. I liked playing, with the boys and in the dirt and with the animals and, all that stuff. And as I've grown up, that is still deeply a part of me. I still love animals. I, consider myself the muscle of most theater groups that I am in. I'm not afraid to be active and I still love animals, but I'm starting to appreciate that I do have a girly side to me too. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. I don't have to fit in someone's box like that. So I can just be who I am and have a whole range of me. Some other things was starting to have difficult conversations with people, making amends, finding out if bridges I burned were truly burned or not, and starting to make some repairs. And that was honestly really hard. That took me months to work up to. I recently had a conversation with someone who had been really close to me, had been like a best friend for many years. And about 3 years back, we had a really tough conversation and we weren't really friends anymore. And it never was explicitly stated that we're not friends, but that was kind of, I think, where, at least in my heart, it left off and we had never talked about it. And so recently I got the opportunity to talk to that person, and there had just been a lot of miscommunication and neither of us wanted to hurt one another. And so we're repairing that friendship now. And even though it's going to be a little while, I think, before we can 100% trust each other again, it's really good. And I'm really happy that we finally had that conversation. So I encourage you, if you're watching this and there's been something that's been weighing on your mind a lot and you're someone you need to make amends with, this is a great time to do that. Take baby steps. It doesn't need to be a full confrontation, but it's a lot easier to do in person than over, email or text or phone call. Like, I really encourage you, go talk to that person in person when it's right for you. This may take you several months, and that's okay. Something else that was a big changer in my life was this year, we were approved last fall for fostering children, and in spring we got our first, and hopefully for now only, foster baby, and she's still with us, and we are in the process of adopting her. And I had always been terrified of being a parent, like extremely terrified. I'd never changed a diaper before, never really babysat. I'd been around kids. I'd taken care of lots of baby animals and adult animals, but this was really a big one. And so now we're 7 months in and she is absolutely incredible. And I've changed more than a few diapers and we've had some sleepless nights. And I think that the big takeaway for me from this experience was really loosening up. I have always been that type A perfectionist person, and that is still, I think, my core personality type. But having a kid, you cannot be that anymore. I had to be flexible for my own sanity, and that meant that toys are getting left on the floor, and not everything is as clean as I want it to be. And even though that still bothers me, it's really prioritizing what needs to get done in my life. So I need to get work stuff done. I don't need to have the living room looking immaculate. I need to make sure that she's not hurting herself. I don't need to get another load of laundry done right now. And so it's made things a lot more stressful in a lot of ways, but it's also made things a lot more relaxing because all of a sudden I've been like forced to sit down and just be quiet and have her fall asleep on top of me. And that's a really cool and humbling experience of I literally can't do anything else right now. And it's been forcing me to take a step back and say that what I'm doing is good enough. And that's been part of also why, we're restarting the YouTube season 2 right now, and that it had to take a longer hiatus than I anticipated because there just was not enough hours in the day to get these things done. There was not time to film videos, to plan them, to do all these other things. And I think that brings me to my next point of how my life has changed since recovery from my own eating disorder, something I really don't talk about that much other than with some of my clients. Because even though I work in the field of eating disorders, even though I have put it out there that I had my own struggles in college, I still feel that shame that I think a lot of people still feel about it. It is still a very taboo topic. No one wants to talk about, the things that are really hard in their life or things that they went through or mental health issues. And I'm trying to become more open about that on my terms. And I think what I really want to convey here is that when I was struggling the most, when I was really fixated on food and counting calories and, in that mind trap that many of my viewers are probably in right now, there was no way I would be getting all the things done that I am now. I wouldn't be able to be there for someone else, let alone myself. You really do have to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. My business wouldn't be where it is now, even if, I wasn't doing eating disorders, if I wasn't recovered. That is not a place to be. So if you're considering working in the field of eating disorders, make sure you've got your own stuff worked out first. But I wouldn't be able to have this focus. I wouldn't be able to be achieving these things because my brain space would be completely still occupied. And it's so nice to have that freedom and be able to eat without fear of the future, to kind of misrepresent a quote there. It's getting on the holiday season again. I was eating candy last night and a donut, and, and it's okay. And, 8-10 years ago, I would have been terrified to do all that in one day. And now it's like, that was a Tuesday. Okay. Like, no big deal. Didn't think about it. Didn't try to calculate it. Didn't feel bad about it. And, there's no compensation, anything. So it's been really wonderful to feel fully recovered for a few years now. I think it's been probably about 7 years I can say that I've been fully recovered. And what a blessing. I really attribute a lot of that to working with amazing clients and getting to promote that all foods fit in a healthy diet, and that your body is fine the way it is, and that you're awesome, and just all this positivity that I get to put out in the world is really reflected back on me. So it really is true that what you put out there will come back to you. And so I encourage everyone to really put a lot of positivity and light out into the world, because it's going to come back to you tenfold, hundredfold. And I've just had really amazing things happening in my personal and professional life this year that I wouldn't have been able to imagine 5-10 years ago. So I wanted to leave you with that. I know this is a really odd video, and if you watched through this far, thanks for taking interest in my life. Hi, Mom. I'm sure you watched this. And we'll get back to our normal type of videos next week, but sometimes we just need to put the realness out there. So here is to a beautiful fall, and what a great reminder, what a wonderful thing it is to sometimes let dead things go. Move on, move forward, and be a light into the world. Thanks.